El Salvador President Bukele has been making headlines in the world of crypto by being one of the first country leaders to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender back in 2021. And since then, he's continued to buy more and more Bitcoin, much to the dismay of some and the elation of others. But there are plenty of people who are curious as to just how much Bitcoin does El Salvador actually own. So that's what we're gonna look at today. Stick around to the end to find out why Salvador keeps buying Bitcoins and find out what El Salvador plans to do with all of those Bitcoins. Let's get it. Welcome to our channel, The Know, one place for crypto education. And here we explain topics of the cryptocurrency world using analogies, stories, and examples so that you can easily understand them. In this video, we are going to explain how many BTC Salvador owns. But before we get into how many Bitcoins El Salvador actually owns, let's go over how El Salvador came about owning any Bitcoins in the first place. Back in 2021, El Salvador became the first country to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender. This means that citizens of El Salvador can use Bitcoin to pay their taxes, buy food, pay rent, and anything else they would normally use their US dollar for. It's pretty crazy that a small country could be the first to make a move like this, but there's definitely other countries that are considering doing the same thing. So when El Salvador made this announcement, they didn't start out with a bunch of Bitcoins. They started out with none. Instead, they were given an allocation of around 500 Bitcoins from various cryptocurrency exchanges, including a gift of 100 Bitcoins from Coinbase. Now, the price of Bitcoin at the time was around $48,000, meaning that El Salvador started out with around $24 million worth of Bitcoin. Since then, however, they haven't just held the initial 500 Bitcoins that they were given. No, El Salvador has continued to accumulate more and more Bitcoins to add to their reserve. Now that we know where these Bitcoins came from, you might be wondering why El Salvador even wants so many Bitcoins. After all, El Salvador isn't exactly a huge country with millions of people. So, why did they decide to go all in on Bitcoin? Well, the answer to this question is a little bit complicated, but we're going to try to break it down in the simplest way that we can. First of all, El Salvador has struggled with inflation, corruption, and a lack of financial stability for years. By adopting Bitcoin as legal tender, they hope to solve all of these problems. For starters, they hope that by adopting Bitcoin, they will be able to reduce the cost of international transactions and remittances. The reason this makes sense is because El Salvador relies heavily on the US dollar. And any time that they have to convert their currency to the US dollar and back again, they have to pay a service fee to the banks. These fees add up fast and can become extremely expensive. However, if they were to use Bitcoin, they wouldn't have to rely on another country's currency or pay hefty bank fees. The second reason that El Salvador adopted Bitcoin is because they hope to attract foreign investment. By making Bitcoin legal tender, El Salvador is signaling to the world that they are open for business and that they are not afraid of new technology. This could attract foreign investors who may want to take advantage of the low cost of living and the business-friendly environment. Finally, the third reason that El Salvador adopted Bitcoin is because they hope to give their citizens more control over their own money. El Salvador has a high level of financial inclusion, meaning that most people have access to bank accounts and other financial services. However, many people are still unbanked or underbanked, meaning that they don't have access to the full range of financial services that they need. By adopting Bitcoin, El Salvador hopes to give everyone in the country access to a global currency that is not controlled by any government or financial institution. Now that we know why El Salvador adopted Bitcoin, let us talk about what they plan to do with all of those Bitcoins that they've been accumulating. As we mentioned earlier, El Salvador currently has around 2,300 Bitcoins in their reserve. They don't really do anything with these Bitcoins except hold on to them. This is probably because they view the Bitcoins as a long-term investment, and they are hoping that the value of Bitcoin will continue to increase over time. In fact, the president of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, has said that he plans to keep buying Bitcoin until they have $500 million worth of Bitcoin. That's around 20,000 bitcoins at the current price. He has also said that he plans to use the profits from the Bitcoin to fund infrastructure projects and other initiatives that will benefit the people of El Salvador. Now, this is a pretty risky strategy, but it could pay off big time if Bitcoin continues to grow in popularity. Only time will tell whether or not this was a good decision. So now that you know how many Bitcoins El Salvador owns and why they keep buying more, let's talk about what you can do with your own Bitcoins. If you're like most people, you probably bought Bitcoin as an investment. Maybe you bought it because you thought it was a great way to make some quick profits. Or maybe you bought it because you believe in the technology and you think it has a bright future ahead of it. Whatever your reason for buying Bitcoin, it's important that you know what to do with it. If you're not planning on using it as legal tender in your country, one of the best things you can do with your Bitcoin is to store it in a cold wallet. A cold wallet is a physical device that allows you to store your Bitcoin offline. This is important for security purposes because it makes it very difficult for hackers to steal your Bitcoin. There are a lot of different cold wallets on the market, but we recommend doing some research and finding one that you feel comfortable with. Another thing you can do with your Bitcoin is to use it to purchase goods and services. As we mentioned earlier, El Salvador uses their Bitcoin to purchase infrastructure and other projects that will benefit the people of El Salvador. You can do something similar by using your Bitcoin to purchase items that you need or want. This helps to promote the adoption of Bitcoin, and it also helps to support businesses that are willing to accept it as payment. Finally, another thing you can do with your Bitcoin is to simply hold on to it. If you believe in the technology and you think it has a bright future ahead of it, then holding on to it could be a good option for you. Just be sure to store it in a safe place so that it doesn't get stolen. Overall, holding Bitcoin can be a great way to diversify your portfolio and to take advantage of potential growth in the cryptocurrency market. Just be sure to do your research and take the necessary precautions to protect your investment. As we end this video, we want to remind you that the future is looking bright for Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. El Salvador's decision to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender is a big step forward for crypto adoption, and we're really excited to see what the future brings. Thanks for watching this video. We hope that you've enjoyed it and learned something new. If you're interested in learning more about cryptocurrency, be sure to follow us and check out our other videos. We love to educate people about crypto and we want to help you become a better investor.